Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog where I'm gonna be reading Children of Memory. So Children of Memory is the third and final book in the Children of Time trilogy, and this is a science fiction trilogy, and I read books 1 and 2 last year, and I have spoilery reading vlogs that I will link in the description if you want to watch them before watching this one. And in this book I will be talking about spoilers from the first two books to, just give context. And then most of the video will be spoiler free about this book, but there is going to be a spoiler section at the end. So I will have timestamps and I will warn when we go into spoilers. And yeah, having said that, let's get into it. Okay, so I am 37% into Children of Memory, and that means I have read 4 of the 12 parts. And I'm going to do sort of a small recap of what happened in books 1 and 2. And basically in book 1, we were following a crew of humans who left a dying Earth because yes, Earth is gone, and they were looking for other planets because there were other planets somewhere in the universe that had been terraformed, prepared for human life. But between the time they were prepared and the time that these humans are now getting there, some other species had actually developed because a virus had been released to the planet, and it had infected some species and it made them develop very quickly. And so in this first book, the main species that they encounter is a species of spiders, and they have formed a very complex, very interesting society, and they basically are now ruling the planet. And when the humans get there, they realize that the planet is not actually ready for them because it's already being occupied by another species, and so they have to figure out who deserves the planet. And in the end, they decide to cooperate, and the two species work together. So humans and the spiders are working together. And then in book 2, they go to a whole other place and they find 2 other species. Basically, we have species of octopi, and they say it in the book that the right word is octopuses, but that is a horrible word. So one of the characters always says octopi, and I will also say octopi because it's a much better word, basically. So they find the octopi who have been infected with, I don't know if it was exactly the same virus as the spiders, but with some virus that made them develop. And so yeah, they also have their own society going on. And there's another species that is sort of a parasite, and they infect humans, but also the octopi, also the spiders, everything. And they can kind of become whoever they infect. They can mimic them, and basically their goal, as a species, is to have new experiences, to just explore and discover new things. And at the end of book 2, which was honestly the only thing I didn't fully remember, but actually got a good recap in this book, but the only thing I didn't fully remember was that basically they are going out to explore, to find other places, and that leads us to this book. So in part 1 of this book, we see another crew of humans getting to another planet, which they decide to call Ymir. And they thought that the planet would be ready for them to just, get there and live, but is not exactly ready. So they start working on making it, suitable for humans. And we also see that they hear a signal coming from somewhere, but they don't know what it is or where it's coming from or anything about it. And I mean, so far, I've only read 4 parts, but so far this was the only one we got from like that past timeline. And then we had 2 timelines. It's still like a past one and a present one, but they are closer together. And then in part 2, we follow people in that same planet, Ymir. But we follow a girl called Liv, and she's a descendant of the captain from like the original crew that got there. And she talks about stories that people tell about some witch and also another group of either people or other creatures that are like out somewhere lurking and that everyone is scared of, but no one really knows if they actually exist or if it's just a myth. And yeah, it's confusing, and things are not doing great with them, and also like there is something just strange going on. And there are some people there in Ymir that have like familiar names, but I don't know how, because like it can't actually be the people they have the names of. At least I don't think it can. Doesn't make sense so far. Also, like the last chapter of part 2, it was from someone else's POV, and it was just confusing. I had no idea what was going on, basically. And then in part 3, we follow like those humans and octopi and spiders and the other species and whatever that we were following in the other books, and they get to another planet called Rourke, and they find yet another species, and they take two members of that species with them, and they continue going out to explore. And also those names of those 2 members of that new species are like, we have heard them already in this book, which makes me even more confused. And then in part 4, it was back in Ymir, in the present, and we were following Liv again, and we kind of learned like what she is trying to achieve. And also the witch, who is not actually a witch, and like we learned the identity, and I was just like, how? And then the ending of part 4 was just shocking, confusing. I have no idea what's going on. I mean, I have a theory because of the last sentence of part 4. And I mean, I guess the whole last chapter, but like especially the last sentence. I have a theory, but I'm confused as to how my theory would work, But I am loving it. And I mean, I am very overwhelmed, but the beginning of these books is usually overwhelmed because we always have like a dual timeline. And we're also confused as to how things get from one point to another. But I am so intrigued and I am loving it. And I think it was 2 weeks ago that I did a reading vlog for Hellbent, and I also did like a non-spoiler section and then like a spoiler section at the end. But I would film a spoiler section for each update, but I am way too confused to talk about spoilers because I mean, I don't know spoilers. I don't know what's going on, So I think I will just film the whole spoiler section at the end because I am extremely confused, but also loving it. And I will update again once I read 4 more parts. Okay, so I am 70% into the book and I've read until part 8 of 12, and we still continue to have 2 timelines, like the one with the people we already knew and the one in the present with the people in Ymir. And these 2 timelines are actually like not too far apart. I don't know if I mentioned that in my first update or not, but they're not too far apart because in the ones from Ymir it says now, and in the other one it says recently. So we know they're not too far apart. And following the timeline with the people we already knew, they are, I think I said that they were going, like they set off somewhere else. And while they are on their journey, we get to learn more about that new species they found in Rourke. And it was very interesting to learn about it because the members of that species, that society, they are much like their relationships are very different from the ones of the spiders or the octopi, even though like they're all complex, but these ones are complex in a different way, and it was really really interesting and really fun. And also those two characters from that new species, they are so funny because they, like, we get chapters from their POV and they are constantly like talking to each other, but it's just so funny, like the way they say things. And obviously not gonna spoil the way how their society works, but really love to learn that. And they do get to their new destination and they decide to explore, and they make some interesting discoveries. And moving on to what is happening in Ymir in the present, things just got more confusing, basically, and there are a lot of confusing conversations and a lot of inconsistencies that most people seem to not even notice. And also, Liv, she meets some people who are trying to guide her in what I hope is the right direction. But since I don't really know what's going on, I'm not sure whether they're actually trying to help or not, especially because of the person they are associated with, because I don't trust that person. And yeah, a lot of weird, strange things are happening that I cannot talk about without spoiling, but basically there is like a confrontation that like I somewhat understood, but at the same time I didn't understand at all. And the ending of part 8 was insane, and I feel like we are getting very close to the reveal of what the hell is going on. And I still have my theory. I am more sure about it. And like I really want to be right, not just because like I want the satisfaction of being right, but also because it would be like really cool if that thing was happening. But at the same time, like I'm wondering how it would happen and especially why, because I don't see an actual reason yet as to why what I think is happening would be happening. So I am still like, I'm not sure, but like it's the only thing that makes sense. And also it would like connect to the title of the book. So like I think I'm right and I really want to be right, but at the same time I am still confused. But having said that, I am still absolutely loving this book. I am obsessed. I really want to find out everything that is happening, everything that has happened to lead to this moment. And yeah, having a great time. And it's just these books, it's always fascinating to see how these different societies of different species work and how these different planets, these different worlds, how they all work. It's, yeah, like I said, fascinating. I love these books so much. I am having the time of my life. And yeah, I will update again once I finish, and I will let you know if I was right or not. Okay, so I have finished Children of Memory, and it was so good. And obviously, like, this last third is even harder to talk about without spoiling things. So I'm going to be very brief, but basically, like, when we are following our people in the sort of past but like recent timeline, we see them, you know, continuing to explore their new location, and they are wondering if they should take a closer look at things, and they don't all agree whether they should or not. And then back in Ymir, things keep getting crazier and stranger, and they definitely like escalate a lot. And I was just on the edge of my seat. I was so excited and also, you know, kind of nervous. And then we get the reveal of what was happening, and I was right. And I mean, then we get some more reveals that I did not actually see coming. And I was shocked, which I mean is connected to what I thought was happening, but like going even further. And yeah, I was shocked, but really, really loved it. And yeah, it was so, so good. But yeah, I can't really talk about any specifics in this section, but now we are going into the spoiler section of this video. So if you have read this book or if you just don't care, keep watching. And if you have not read it and do care about the spoiler, just skip to my final thoughts. There are timestamps. And yeah, this is your last warning for spoilers. So, regarding the spoilers, there are two things that I want to talk about. And first is like that other species that they found in Rourke. They were birds. I think they were sort of crows. And the thing that I said that was interesting about them is that you needed to have two of the species to work together because they think very differently, and they like the two of them together work as a unit, which is why I mean, it's not why they took two of them because they didn't know that at first, but like it was good that they did take two of them because the birds need two members of the species to function properly as a unit. They need to work together. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And I really liked them because they were so funny and they were always like bickering with each other. And it was just hilarious. And also, they were very, very useful to the whole plot. And speaking of the plot, so my theory was that, I mean, let's backtrack a little. So the other new location that the team we were following from the other books got to was Ymir. And they thought there was something weird going on, and they did decide to, I mean, some of them did decide to go down to the planet and see what was happening. And then in the present, in Ymir, I think I mentioned that there were people whose names were familiar, but I couldn't really understand how the characters that we knew were in Ymir. And yeah, it was sort of kind of the characters that we knew because the main person that was there was Miranda, and she was actually like those parasites I talked about that can mimic other people. They were mimicking a human called Miranda. And yeah, she was on like the crew that we were following from the recent timeline. And yeah, she was in Ymir, and I couldn't understand how, but she was there, and there were other characters there like Fabian and Portia, who are spiders, and Paul, who is one of the octopi. And they were also there, and that's what I was really confused about. And then the witch in the woods was Kern, who is an AI, and she was also like in the other crew. And the birds were also there. They were working with the witch. And I was very confused. And then the witch, the deal that she made with Liv was that she could help her bring her grandfather back because Liv was looking for her grandfather if Liv helped the witch get the people she was looking for. And the people she was looking for were anyone who didn't seem to fit with everyone else. And that would be Miranda and Portia and Fabian and Paul. But Liv, like, she realized who Kern was looking for, but she really liked Miranda because she was her teacher and they were friends. And so she didn't want to betray Miranda, but other people also realized that they didn't really belong there, and they killed them. And that was at the end of part 4, so the first third that I read. And at the very end, like the very, very last sentences of part 4 were the birds talking to each other. And one of them was saying, "Time for us to do our job, or go back to herself and get another ticking off. And we've had quite enough of those in the past. Really very, very many of those." And then the last paragraph was, "Thought we'd had enough of that with what we've just seen. I'll remember next time." And I was like, what do you mean next time? So my theory was that this was a simulation that was happening many times. And then I started being more sure of that because Miranda and the others were back and they were repeating. And there were many, like I said, inconsistencies because Liv remembered having her grandfather, but at the same time, she knew he could not be her grandfather because he was alive like centuries. I don't know if centuries, but like many years before he should be alive if he was a grandfather. And also, like, in some cases, like, she knew her parents should be dead, but they were alive. And there were a lot of things that didn't add up. And they keep saying that the other times and things we should remember and all of that. So yeah, it was a simulation, and Miranda was in the simulation, and she had, like, the Fabian, Portia, and Paul that were in the simulation were not real. They were just created by Miranda. So she was there because she, like, as she went down to the planet, she was sucked into the simulation, and she just wanted to help, because we learned that they were all dead, actually, like the one Liv and those people that in the past went to Ymir. They're all dead because they could not get the planet to be ready for humans. So they all died. And yeah, Miranda wanted to help, and she was not aware that she was in a simulation. So Kern and the birds went into the simulation knowing that they were there to try to get Miranda out. And yeah, that is what I thought was happening at first. That was the first reveal, and I was like, okay, I was right. But then we learned another thing. So after they get out of the simulation, they get back to their ship, like Miranda and Kern and yeah, the birds, and we learned that they never actually lived in Ymir, anyone, because, like, they just died. They never got to live whatever was in the simulation. And then I think it was Kern. Yeah, then Kern says, simulation engine doesn't record events. It speculates. It runs through experiments, or that's what happened when Holt and the others arrived. It copied the starting state of them all. Holt, the shuttle, and the Ark. All their preparation and work, copied at such a ridiculous level of fidelity that from the point of view of those inside the simulation, there was no moment of transition. They'd always been there, and then it let the events run as if they'd landed the shuttle, all the way to the end. First well, and then badly, and then what we saw, the empty town, Liv, and then again and again, same parameters, so it goes the same way. So, like, none of that actually ever happened. Liv never actually existed out of the simulation because they all died. But, like, the simulation kept running the same way, like, in a cycle, every single time. Like, Holt getting there, having children having children, and then Liv existing. And she was, like, in the simulation, she was the last person to die. But then when Miranda got there, you know, things were changed because she was not supposed to be there. And that is why there were so many inconsistencies and things being strange when Miranda was in the simulation. But yeah, none of that actually ever happened, and they were trying to figure out why the engine even existed, because it predated any of them, even Kern, who is centuries and centuries and centuries old. Because, I mean, she's an AI now, but she was a human before. She was just, like, her consciousness was uploaded, and she's an AI now, but she was human. And the machine is even older than her. So they were, like, trying to study it, and they also tried to, I mean, they didn't try, they extracted Liv's consciousness from the machine, and they were just gonna work together. And yeah, that was mind-blowing. Also, I have no idea if my explanation made any sense, but there is that, and those were the spoilers I wanted to talk about, and let's get into my final thoughts. So this book, like I said, was incredible, was amazing, and I think the most fascinating thing about the books in this series is always, like, learning about the different species and about the different planets, different worlds, how everything works. I am always, like, so, like I said, fascinated by that, always so interested. I really always want to know everything about it. And especially in this book, the characters as well, because in the first book, I like the characters as, like, a whole species. Like, I like the humans, I like the spiders, but I didn't really care about them as individuals. In book 2, I cared more about them as individuals. And in this one, I was really attached to every single character, even, like, the new characters that we only met in this book. I was attached to everyone, and I definitely, like, felt for them. I felt really bad about a lot of things because a lot of things went wrong. And yeah, I really liked everyone. Even a character that I did not like in the 2 previous books, I really liked her in this one. I liked everyone. And I also really love always the discussions that are in these books. And I can't really talk about the discussion in this one because it would go into spoilers. but loved it. And obviously the plots, I love the, the mystery of trying to figure out how you got from one point to another. It just kept me so invested and I was just on the edge of my seat and I just wanted to know. And obviously loved the reveal, loved being right, and loved that it was so interesting. And I annotated everything in my ebook. So when I get my physical book, I'm going to, pass my annotations to my physical book. And I feel like I'm going to get so many like things making sense now that I know what it is. And also like I feel like I want to already reread all of the books because everything will make so much sense now. And yeah, I think this is the last book in the series, but I just wish there were more because I really, really love them. And I definitely want to read more books from this author, which I already did when I read the two first books last year. But then, I mean, there are just so many books that I want to read. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I had such a good time with this book. Never wanted it to end, to be honest, which is why I took longer to read than I should have, because I really wanted to know, but at the same time, I didn't want it to end. And yeah, had the best time ever reading this book and obviously giving it 5 stars. And yeah, that is everything for this week's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a like and subscribe. And I will talk to you next time. Bye!